What's going on, Vikings fans? This is Christian Stoynev, and as you can see, today I'm going to talk about my favorite football team, the Minnesota Vikings, and we're going to recap free agency, see what's going on with the team, and what we can foresee happening in the near future. So the first things first, we got to recap free agency. So free agency opened up last week with the Vikings being one of the biggest spenders. In fact, I think, are the biggest spender in this free agency period. They had a lot of money to work with, considering the Kirk Cousins contract is finally gone. So this was part of the mega plan. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the GM, and head coach Kevin O'Connell have pretty much, since they got in here in Minnesota 3 years ago, pretty much said that they were going to clean everything up, starting with obviously the biggest, most expensive position in the quarterback, and kind of be able to almost do an audit of their own football team to kind of get things manageable, because the previous administration with Rick Spielman and back when Mike Zimmer was the head coach was kind of just constantly putting money off on the back end and eventually kind of capping themselves out. So the major plan obviously started, they drafted J.J. McCarthy to kind of set themselves up to have that rookie deal on a rookie quarterback on the rookie deal. And essentially they offered whatever number they did to Kirk Cousins and said, hey, you can stay if you want at this price. Otherwise, you're good to go, which I love that they stuck to their guns there. And Kirk left, and they had to put up with the dead cap for a year, and that year has happened. That's gone. They have McCarthy now entering the second year as a quarterback. I'm kind of going to go through the things I really, really like so far with what they've done in this offseason. And the number one thing as a Viking fan that I'm sure other Viking fans will agree with is the fact that they finally spent money and addressed the offensive line. We've been saying this for a long time. I mean, the tackle positions have been pretty solidified with Brian O'Neill and with Christian Darrisaw, but the guards has been kind of a disaster, and it's been 2 straight years of us pretty much counting on Dalton Reisner to kind of come in and save the day, because the draft pick that we had in Ed Ingram was not really coming through, and halfway through the season, in back-to-back years, pretty much the same thing happened. Last year, they counted on Blake Brandel starting at the other guard position, and he was all right, but he wasn't anything too special. And the center, Garrett Bradbury, had been there for a while, and he's fine, except when he has to face an actual all-pro type of defensive tackle in which he just totally gets eaten up and pushed around and can't do anything. And, sometimes not even to his fault. He's just not that big of a guy. We've heard the reports in camp all the time that he put on 10 pounds or whatever it may be, and then that weight comes off and he just gets crushed. So finally, the Vikings addressed the offensive line, which is my favorite thing that they did this offseason. Ryan Kelly is your new center. He's going to come in and, more than likely, probably, essentially end up meaning that Garrett Bradbury is either going to get traded or he's going to get cut. He might say it as a backup, which I highly doubt. I think the Vikings could get something with him, even if it's a 7th-round pick. You take that, especially with them only having 4 picks in this year's draft. I totally think that he's going to get dealt before the draft. Whether that's a 6th round, maybe even a 5th-round pick, it's something, and they need draft capital. Will Fries was the top free agent guard. They signed a big deal with the Vikings, so we addressed that guard position there. So now, with those 2 guys coming in as certain starters, you have Christian Darrisaw, who more than likely should, and we expect to be healthy come the start of the regular season. And then you have Brian O'Neill. 4 of the 5 are pretty much Pro Bowlers. So that should make, if you're keeping Blake Brandel at the other guard position, that's fine. He wasn't terrible. And honestly, the elevated play from the other positions should elevate his play as well, and it should help him out. So if he's your weakest link, I think I feel pretty good going into the season with that. So I really like what they did. And on top of that, I think they finally said, they definitely did. They finally put their hands up in the air and said, all right, Ed Ingram didn't pan out. Let's just get rid of him now while we can and get something in return. So they traded him to Houston and got a 6th-round pick. And we'll get back to that 6th-round pick later, because the Vikings have been dealing this offseason. The second thing that I like, second favorite thing that the Vikings did this offseason was not fall for the bait. We all watched last season play out. Sam Darnold was terrific for most of the season. He wasn't great towards the end, but in my honest opinion, even if he hadn't been great, or even if he had played solid in those final 2 games, there still would have been a decision between whether you keep him Sam Darnold and pay him. And honestly, it would have cost more than the $30 million he signed pretty much with Seattle. So you would have been looking at, if you had played fine in those last 2 games, probably 40-ish mil for a quarterback. And the whole plan of this administration has been essentially to restart the clock with the quarterback, get a rookie deal so that you could take advantage of that contract and be able to add pieces around the rookie, which is why they drafted J.J. McCarthy. So had they re-signed Darnold for 40 mil, Will Fries probably not going to be wouldn't have been a Viking. Ryan Kelly probably wouldn't have been a Viking. I don't really know where they would have spent their money, maybe 1 or 2 of those guys, but some of the other free agent signings that they made, which I'm happy that they made, would not have been able to happen had they paid Sam Darnold that 40 mil. And you're looking at a possibly flawed team unless Darnold actually became the franchise quarterback, which, hey, maybe he could have become that, but I think nobody really felt like Darnold was 100% of the cause for all his good numbers last year. A lot of people are giving Kevin O'Connell that credit, rightfully so. We saw Josh Dobbs come in and perform great, and the guy hasn't pretty much gotten a start since then. So he's had people come in and play well. Kirk Cousins really struggled in Atlanta. I know he was kind of established before he came into Minnesota, but again, I think a lot of the credit goes to Kevin O'Connell there. We'll see with how Darnold plays in Seattle, but I was very happy that they didn't fall for the bait. They let Darnold go. They said all the right things, even though we knew that more than likely he wasn't going to come back, and they stuck to their plan, which I'll touch on right now, is what makes me feel like they are not going to bring in Aaron Rodgers. Now, that is a kind of separate situation because with Darnold, if you would have re-signed him, the plan, unless it was a franchise tag or something, the plan wouldn't have been he's our quarterback for just 1 year, because those would have been conflicting things. Like Seattle right now signed him to a 3-year deal, and they can get out of that contract in a year, but obviously they're telling him we're committed to you for 3 years. That is what they're telling him. That might not be what ends up happening, but that's what they're telling him. So if the Vikings would have offered him the same deal for 3 years, you're telling him we plan on you being our quarterback for the next 3 years. So then now what happens with J.J. McCarthy? So that's why I'm glad they didn't do that. They said we're going to stick to the plan and get rid of that. The Rodgers situation presents something completely different because with him, it's kind of understood that he would only be the quarterback pretty much for this next year. So you would essentially be telling him, hey, you're coming in as a final piece to a Super Bowl roster. You come in for the 1 year, and hopefully we win the whole damn thing. But there's still a clear plan of McCarthy is the future. So now you don't have to worry about that kind of drama. So if McCarthy's not starting, the only person I'm okay with starting is Aaron Rodgers. The guy has proven it. The guy has been a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro, a Super Bowl champion. So if he comes in, the Vikings might be Super Bowl contenders for sure. And other than that, just give me an old guy to back up J.J. McCarthy, and I'm ready to roll with the J.J. McCarthy era. And I also know how to tame my expectations because he essentially will be a rookie quarterback. And even at his best, let's say he has a Jaden Daniels type year, which would be phenomenal. We would love that. Washington didn't win the Super Bowl. It's very rare that a rookie quarterback wins the Super Bowl. So I just hope that they can make the playoffs with McCarthy and maybe win a game or 2 in the playoffs. That would be great for his rookie year. And then we're talking Super Bowl window. Here we come. So Rodgers, otherwise McCarthy, I'm happy either way because Rodgers would only mean Rodgers for 1 year. And the picture is still clear. The plan is still there for him to be your future QB. The other thing I really loved, they addressed the defensive line. Now, personally, yes, there were holes on the D-line, but I didn't think that was as important as the offensive line. Addressing the offensive line was the biggest thing, in my opinion, for sure. The defensive line, Harrison Phillips is solid. Jalen Redmond was coming on towards the end of the season. He rolled his ankle there, and I can't remember if he rolled his ankle or had a concussion, but either way, he missed a game and a half or 2 games there towards the end when he was actually kind of coming on. So, and I fully expected the Vikings to draft a defensive lineman. So I didn't see like that. I didn't think that was a major need as much as the offensive line. So I still am happy with what they did. They got in an all-pro player in Jonathan Allen. I think he's multiple-time Pro Bowler. And Javon Hargrave, he came in from San Francisco. So now, they are set up in the D-line as well. And, another thing that kind of does for them now with the draft coming up and not having much draft capital, they only have 4 picks available to them, is that it frees them up to pick the best player available, which is awesome because a lot of times when these teams desperately need a player, they just draft the best D lineman available, even though there might be a running back available that actually has dropped in the draft and is a better value pick, but because you're so desperately in the need of a position, you end up picking the defensive lineman who might not even be a good value pick at that point. So now, because they also made a trade that was a very big surprise, that Ed Ingram 6th-round pick that they received from Houston in that trade, they flipped and sent that to San Francisco for Jordan Mason, who, if y'all remember, played great last year when he filled in for Christian McCaffrey, and they swapped 6th-round picks in this year's draft with the 49ers. So for the Vikings, I mean, that's a steal. Jordan Mason now he's either your 1A or your 1B. He's probably going to be sharing the starting duties with Aaron Jones. Also, it takes some of that pressure and the mileage off of Aaron Jones, who's getting up there in running back age. So it's a great deal. And again, it frees up the Vikings to not have to draft a running back with their 24th pick or any pick really in this NFL draft. They probably still will. They'll probably still get a D lineman. But if anything, at this point now, I think their biggest need is corner. They re-signed Byron Murphy, which is great. But they brought in Isaiah Rodgers from Philly as well, and they have Will Blackman coming back from injury last year. So that's 3 corners. Dwight McGlothern was kind of a backup last year who maybe can come on. So you have 4 that more than likely are definitely on your roster. So I definitely think they're going to use the top pick that they have and try to get help in the secondary. Harrison Smith is coming back, so safety is not, even though it is a need now because he's getting up there and this is probably his last year, but it's not a desperate move where now you have to draft a safety either. So again, overall, what Kwesi has done this offseason has been tremendous. I know a lot of fans don't want him to get Aaron Rodgers, but again, I don't mind the Aaron Rodgers thing because there is a firm understanding. You are still within your plan of McCarthy is the future. Now, he might be the future in year 3, and that's okay. Jordan Love wasn't the future for the Packers until year 4. So if it's year 3, it's year 3, and that's totally cool. If year 2, he doesn't get that chance because you're bringing in a quarterback that might be the final piece to a Super Bowl winning team. So again, overall, great offseason so far for the Vikings. I think they have around $30 million left in cap space. I still expect them to make some moves here and there. The Rodgers news is kind of what everybody's waiting on. And if they don't get Rodgers, they'll probably get a backup like Joe Flacco, even Ryan Tannehill. I don't mind. Personally, I just want an old guy that could be a dad to JJ McCarthy, pretty much. Teach him how to do things, teach him how to prepare, be there for him. But also, should anything happen to McCarthy, those guys know how to run an offense. They know how to lead. And honestly, with this roster, they just need to protect the football and not try to do too much. That's the way I see it. So again, so far so good on the Vikings. Probably will be back with some more Vikings recap in the next few days once the Aaron Rodgers thing shakes out and we see where he goes. Personally, I think he's going to Pittsburgh. That's my take. I don't see him going to the Giants. If he's going to the Giants, he's chasing the money because they're not going to win the Super Bowl. So I think if he's going to the Giants, it's the money, and I don't think he needs the money. And if he goes to Pittsburgh, I think that they could be contenders with him. They have a great defense. Now they got DK Metcalf. So I think in Pittsburgh, it gives him the second best chance to win, with the first chance to win being in Minnesota. But I don't think the Vikings are, wanting to kind of, I guess, shake it up right now. I think they're just sticking to their plan. I think they'll give McCarthy this year to be that rookie quarterback so that hopefully by year 3 and 4, those 2 years, if McCarthy can have a good rookie year, those 2 years, I don't see how the Vikings aren't in that top 4 conversation for Super Bowl contenders, possibly Super Bowl champs. So good things coming up for the Vikings. I'll be back with another Vikings recap in a few days, most likely. Skol.